Estonia says 3 Russian fighter jets have entered its airspace without permission.
Again and again, President Putin has escalated.
This was premeditated.
Situations we've seen with drones in Poland and also Romania, this time
You have been warned.
Estonia has accused Russia of the most serious violation of its airspace in years. 3 MiG-31s entered sovereign skies without clearance. Transponders off, no comms, tracked near Tallinn before NATO Italian F-35s scrambled from Amari to intercept them. Estonia has now triggered NATO Article 4, Consultation S, a rare diplomatic weapon. This isn't routine buzzing the border. This was a full violation. Now let's take a look at what's been said by the press.
I have only one request to the Russian government. If another missile or aircraft enters our space without permission, deliberately or by mistake, and gets shot down and the wreckage falls on NATO territory, please don't come here to whine about it. You have been warned.
Pretty strong words there, pretty strong words. And you see the way he gives that little shuffle of his head as if to go, I know what you're doing, do you know what I mean? He's basically calling them out, isn't he? Do you know what I mean?
Estonia says 3 Russian fighter jets have entered its airspace without permission. Let's bring in our military analyst, Sean Bell. Sean, what more can you tell us? This follows, obviously, the situations we've seen with drones in Poland and also Romania, this time a 12-minute incursion by 3 jets. What's going on?
Yeah, good afternoon, Gareth. I mean, the drones, because of the numbers, the distances involved, there was a potential that this was an error. As soon as you start talking about 3 MiG-21s, these are Foxhound supersonic fighter aircraft, a key part of the Russian Air Force inventory.
Just to put this into perspective, right, yeah, he's 100% right here. A drone may be, do you know what I mean, get away with that. 3 of the most advanced aircraft on the planet with presumably well-trained, articulate and motivated pilots. Is there that much of a chance they'd go that far wrong and stay there for 12 minutes? Makes it a little bit more less believable, doesn't it?
Inventory, they're incredibly capable. 12 minutes in Estonian airspace, they will have known that they were there. They will have known exactly what they were doing there. This was pre-planned. This was no mistake. And the challenge, of course, is that for NATO, well, Estonia initially, but then NATO, they were clearly identified. They were not engaged. And I think this will be a real test for the rules of engagement for NATO. But let's be quite clear, unlike the drone incursions earlier, this was premeditated. I operated in the Cold War in Germany. We had a buffer zone there. And believe you me, when you had gone even close to it, people were warning you. So going inside Estonian airspace for 12 minutes is no mistake.
Absolutely not at all. Nailed it there, didn't he? No mistake whatsoever. They knew what they were doing. And this is where the political thing kicks off, doesn't it? It all becomes a little bit childish. A bit, he said, you said, they said, I said, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean?
I'm interested, just as we see this image of Putin flashing up our screen, and this is prior images, some library footage we're showing our viewers. Sean, how far up the chain of command does this have to go to allow Russian aircraft to violate sovereign national airspace, NATO patrolled airspace as well? Would Putin have to have signed this off?
One of the things that's unique to autocracies is that they're paranoid about their own military turning against them. So they don't have, in the West, we have delegated responsibility. You operate with commander's intent. So even our corporals and sergeants can be leaders on the battlefield and make their own decisions. That is not the case in the Russian military. When something happens, everybody looks to the right, looks up at the next guy and says, what do you want me to do, sir? He looks right and does exactly the same thing. Something as serious as this, there is no doubt that President Putin would have had to sign this off. And it's clearly, I think, a test for NATO, because there's long been a discussion that Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Baltic states, formerly part of the Soviet Union, haven't got a great deal of military capability indigenous to them. In fact, Estonia, where this airspace was incurred, they don't have an active air force. I think they've got something like 2,000 personnel, a few unmanned aircraft and some radars. And that's one of the reasons why NATO does its Baltic air policing out of Elmar.
So it would appear to be this is a straight up from the top, as he said, because they are autocratic. It's like Putin says or it doesn't happen type society. Do you know what I mean? It looks as if it definitely was on purpose, and it's a bit bullying as well, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Because you're moving into these states that obviously haven't got a lot of gear, a lot of kit, a lot of backup, but they have, and that's what NATO's all about, and that's what you don't like.
Air base in Estonia that patrols the skies over there to provide some deterrence value. But be under no illusions, this would have come from the top. It's a very clear test for NATO because up till now, NATO seems reluctant to fight back. And when you have military aircraft of an air force that's currently involved in a war just a few miles down the road, this is very serious, and NATO will be looking very carefully at how it responds.
Do you know, that's how he always does enough to get noticed, but not enough to get a slap? He does, doesn't he? Do you know, he's very calculated, just enough to get just enough to push it out there, just enough for everybody to know, but not enough for you to actually lay into him, do you know what I mean? Very calculated.
I'm just thinking of where this goes, Sean, because, at the end of the day, Russia's got massively bogged down in Ukraine, and the reality in any days, weeks, months, or maybe even in the short-term years' time, you can't see it legitimately entering and violating, the territorial ground of these nations. It can't muster enough forces to try and, do what it's done in Ukraine and Estonia anytime soon. So, is the purpose of this just to keep throwing the thorn in the side of NATO, to keep making Trump look like a fool, to keep trying to trip the grouping up? Because it doesn't serve any legitimate military purpose per se, does it? This is more just throwing stones and seeing where they land and kind of, jabbing the hornet's nest, it feels.
It might be, but I always think it's a bit dangerous if we assume that Putin is stupid, because very rarely does he do something that has no specific military intent.
Absolutely back that one up 100%. Is to assume he definitely ain't stupid. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, that would be a terrible thing to do, is assume anybody was stupid. Do you know what I mean? You always take it as if they're the absolute top of their game, and then you can deal with it accordingly.
I think it's been the West is having to look at, does it continue to help Ukraine as it has been, and gradually it might slow the pace of losing, but Ukraine is still losing, or has it got to look at new ways to help? And the no-fly zone is something that has been regularly talked about, particularly with the drone incursions in Romania and Poland. It's starting to gather a little head of steam. Now, if Putin was to demonstrate that the airspace over Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania was vulnerable, he might draw limited numbers of NATO assets to force a defence of that region, and therefore make it less likely that they would have the appetite or the resources to do a no-fly zone into Ukraine. Now, none of us know. Clearly, it's only in the mind of President Putin, but I think there does follow a little bit of logic here that Putin's probably feeling worried that the West is getting slightly emboldened, and therefore just reminding it that actually up to the north, those former Baltic states are very vulnerable without NATO air support.
There's always a reason. There is, without doubt, a reason this time. It's just, you got to work it out sometimes, haven't you? You know what I mean? Or take it for what it is. But he won't be doing it for nothing. He will not have been doing that for nothing. That you can be sure of. Right, we've just seen what the press are saying. So here's our take. The facts first. On 19th of September, 3 Russian MiG-31s flew into Estonian airspace for 12 minutes. Near Vainloo Island in the Gulf of Finland. They had no flight plans, their transponders were switched off, and they ignored Estonian controllers. NATO Italian F-35s under Baltic air policing scrambled from Amari and escorted them out. Estonia went public fast, releasing flight path data and called for NATO Article 4 consultations. The bigger picture: Estonia is not Poland or Germany. Its airspace is narrow, its capital, Tallinn, is close to the border, and it hosts critical NATO communication nodes. A violation here isn't just a poke, it's a test of NATO's willingness to defend its smallest front lines. Why this matters now? Only months ago, NATO drilled exactly this scenario in Exercise Hedgehog. Over 17,000 troops from 12 nations, including the British Army's 4th Light Brigade combat team, practiced trench warfare, rapid deployment and drone integration on Estonian soil. At the time, critics laughed it off as overkill. But this week proves Hedgehog wasn't theatre. It was foresight. Russia's denial. Moscow claims the jets never entered Estonian airspace. They accused Tallinn of whipping up fear. That denial is part of the game. If NATO fractures over whether to believe Estonia or not, the alliance weakens without a shot fired. Estonia knows this, hence invoking Article 4, forcing every ally to sit down and back them up. The strategic play. Incursions like this are about tempo. Every scramble costs money. Every diplomatic flare-up drains attention. Russia wants NATO tired, divided and hesitant. The danger is one miscalculation, a collision, a downed civilian jet, an over-eager pilot turning a probe into a flashpoint. The takeaway, NATO can't afford to shrug. Hedgehog showed readiness. This incident proves the need. The alliance has to reinforce Baltic air defences, field-layered counter-drone systems and stay politically united. Otherwise, the probing becomes normalised and deterrence dies slowly, doesn't it? Drop your comments below. Do you think this was deliberate or a mistake? Subscribe to our channel, and if you want to hear the conversations we can't discuss openly, join our membership for just 16 pence a day on ForceTV Plus, and I'll see you soon.